Close your eyes. Hear the waves. Hear the engines. Hear the silence before history changes forever. It is the early morning of June 6, 1944, a moment when the future of the world hangs by a single thread. This is the story of D-Day, the day courage touched the shores of Normandy, the day that began the end of Nazi Germany, the day ordinary young men did the impossible. By 1944, Europe had endured nearly 5 years of terror. Cities were reduced to ashes, families torn apart, millions imprisoned or killed. Entire nations vanished behind enemy lines. Hitler controlled almost everything from the French coast to the gates of Russia. For many across Europe, hope was fading. But across the English Channel, that hope was being rebuilt, secretly, carefully, relentlessly. Millions of soldiers, sailors, engineers, pilots, medics, and resistance fighters were preparing for one single day, a day that would either bring liberation or disaster. Freeing Europe required landing an army on a coastline fortified with concrete bunkers, artillery positions, machine gun nests, minefields, underwater traps, barbed wire, elite German divisions. No modern army had ever attempted an invasion of this scale. But the Allies had no choice. If they failed, the war could last another decade. So they created a plan so massive, so complex, so daring, that it seemed impossible. But impossible was the only option left. To win on D-Day, the Allies needed one thing above all: surprise. If Hitler correctly guessed the landing point, the invasion would be crushed before it even began. So the Allies built the most elaborate deception operation in history, Operation Fortitude. They used inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft, fake radio traffic, phony military units, staged photos, double agents planted inside the German network. And at the center of this deception was General George S. Patton, whom the Germans feared more than any Allied commander. To them, Patton meant action, so they believed whatever army he commanded was real. The deception worked perfectly. German intelligence concluded the main invasion would land at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. Even after D-Day began, Hitler believed Normandy was just a distraction. This mistake changed everything. In the months before D-Day, Allied soldiers trained endlessly, climbing cliffs, marching through mud, practicing amphibious assaults, studying sand models of the beaches, memorizing every bunker and gun position. They carried heavy gear, ate poor rations, slept little, trained hard. Many were only 18 or 19 years old. They joked with each other, wrote letters home, played cards to pass time. But beneath the laughter was fear, a quiet fear of what was coming. Some kept diaries. One soldier wrote, "I don't fear dying. I fear dying before I do something meaningful." The invasion was scheduled for June 5th. But a massive storm hit the channel. Waves rose higher than landing craft. Winds threatened to scatter paratroopers. Clouds blocked aircraft visibility. Commander Eisenhower faced an impossible decision: delay and risk losing everything, or go and risk disaster. Meteorologists predicted a tiny break in weather for June 6th. Just a few hours. A small window of hope. Eisenhower took it. He gave the order the world had been waiting for. Okay, let's go. On the night of June 5th, thousands of aircraft filled the sky. Inside each C-47 plane, cramped space, sweat, fear, determination. Paratroopers carried up to 100 pounds of gear: rifles, food, grenades, radios, TNT, medical kits, parachutes. At 1 a.m., anti-aircraft fire lit up the sky like a storm of fireflies. Planes shook violently. Many soldiers vomited from fear and motion. Some planes were hit and crashed before reaching the drop zones. At 1:20 a.m., the green light appeared. Men jumped into the darkness. They drifted across flooded marshes, open fields, rooftops, forests, German-held villages. Some drowned in deep water. Others were captured immediately, but most formed small groups and carried out their missions, securing causeways, blowing bridges, capturing crossroads, disturbing German reinforcements. They fought alone, cut off, scattered, but they succeeded. Without them, the beach landings would have been slaughter. Just before dawn, the largest fleet in human history appeared on the horizon. 7,000 ships stretching across 50 miles of ocean. Witnesses said, "It looked like you could walk across the water from ship to ship." The sea was alive. Destroyers firing massive shells. Battleships shaking the coastline. Landing craft bouncing violently. Smoke covering the horizon. Aircraft roaring overhead. Inside the landing craft, soldiers waited in silence. Some prayed. Some kissed photos of loved ones. Some closed their eyes and accepted whatever would happen. When the ramps dropped, there was no turning back. Nothing prepared the Americans for Omaha Beach. German defenses were stronger here than anywhere else. Machine guns swept the shoreline. Mortars exploded relentlessly. Snipers fired at anything that moved. Mines tore apart landing craft. Waves pushed soldiers underwater. Many drowned before firing a single shot. Others crawled desperately across the sand, searching for any cover. The beach was a nightmare of smoke, water, blood, screams, chaos. Survival depended on crawling, hiding, sprinting, luck. Command structure collapsed. Units were scattered. Officers were killed early. But small groups of soldiers, some as little as 3 or 4 men, began climbing the cliffs, fighting bunker to bunker. Engineers blew holes in enemy defenses. Slowly, painfully, Omaha Beach was taken. It cost hundreds of lives. But failure was not an option. At Utah Beach, a strong current pushed American troops 2,000 yards south of their intended landing zone. A mistake that saved lives. When General Teddy Roosevelt Jr. realized this, he famously said, "We're starting the war from right here." His courage inspired everyone around him. Utah became the easiest American landing of the day. Sometimes history changes because of strategy, sometimes because of bravery, sometimes because of luck. The British and Canadians faced fierce resistance. At Gold Beach, massive guns targeted every landing craft. At Juno Beach, Canadians suffered high casualties in the first minutes, but pushed farther inland than any other force that day. At Sword Beach, British troops fought into the streets of Ouistreham and linked with paratroopers. Together, these landings formed a solid line across Normandy. D-Day was not won by soldiers alone. Engineers cleared mines while bullets flew over their heads. Medics treated wounds in open sand with no cover. Pilots flew dangerously low to support infantry. Navy crews rescued drowning men. Chaplains prayed with the dying. Radio operators sent coordinates under fire. These men saved countless lives. They rarely appear in movies. But without them, D-Day would have failed. German soldiers defending Normandy were a mix of veterans from Russia, young conscripts, troops from occupied countries. Many were exhausted, undersupplied, and overwhelmed. Hitler refused to release armored divisions until it was too late. German communications were confused. Deception operations blinded their intelligence. By the time they realized Normandy was the real invasion, the Allies were already too strong. D-Day came at a terrible cost. By nightfall, 10,000 Allied casualties, 4,400 confirmed dead, hundreds of missing paratroopers, thousands of wounded on the beaches, entire units shattered. Families received letters weeks later. Some never knew exactly where their sons died. But every sacrifice pushed the world closer to freedom. D-Day was only the beginning. The next 2 months were brutal. Hedgerow fighting, tank battles, sniper attacks, urban combat, endless mud, heat, exhaustion. The Allies fought for inches of land. But slowly, the German lines broke. On August 25th, Paris was liberated. Europe began to breathe again. D-Day opened the Western Front, split German defenses, demoralized the Nazi leadership, united Allied nations, accelerated Hitler's downfall. It was the beginning of the end. The moment the war shifted, the world after June 6th was not the same as the world before it. D-Day was not one battle. It was a miracle of courage, sacrifice, strategy, and humanity. Young men crossed the sea knowing they might never return. But they went anyway. They climbed cliffs, crawled through sand, carried wounded comrades, fought for each other, for freedom, and for a world they believed could be better. June 6, 1944, was the day thousands gave everything, so millions could be free. Their legacy lives in every democratic nation, every free voice, every life untouched by tyranny. D-Day changed the world because ordinary men chose to do the extraordinary.